এয়া আকাশবাণী গুৱাহাটী
বিদ্যাৰ্থীৰ অনুষ্ঠান। মৰমৰ ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকল, তোমালোক আটাইকে প্ৰীতি আৰু শুভেচ্ছা জনাই আজিৰ অনুষ্ঠান মুকলি কৰিছোঁ। আজি নৱম শ্ৰেণীৰ ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকলৰ বাবে ইংৰাজী ব্যাকৰণৰ পাঠ আছে। ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকল, আজি তোমালোকক টেন্সৰ বিষয়ে ক'বলৈ লোৱা হৈছে। তোমালোকৰ বাবে পাঠ যুগুতাই আগবঢ়াইছে তাৰিণী চৌধুৰী চৰকাৰী উচ্চতৰ মাধ্যমিক বহুমুখী বালিকা বিদ্যালয়ৰ শিক্ষয়িত্ৰী শুভলক্ষ্মী বৰুৱাই। আজি শুনা এই পাঠৰ প্ৰথম খণ্ড।
Hello students, I am Subhalakshmi Baruah, here to do an English grammar lesson with you. Today's topic is tenses. Before we begin, let's do a quick recap. Please keep your notebook and pen ready because as we proceed with the class, I would like you to note down a few sentences to help you understand the topic. When we talk of tense, we are actually talking about verb forms or verb structures. But before we proceed towards these verb forms or verb structures, let us briefly discuss types of verbs so that you understand which type of verb we actually use when we talk of tenses. You already know that there are different types of verbs, and they are finite verbs, non-finite verbs, regular verbs, irregular verbs, transitive verbs, intransitive verbs. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you remember which of these types of verbs have tenses, which are, as I have already said, verb forms or verb structures of a specific kind? Let me help you. The verb form of finite verbs are called tenses. So, now when we are talking about finite verbs, you also have to be clear about what are non-finite verbs. So to help you do that, I would like you to note down a few sentences. Are you ready? Okay, sentence number 1. I enjoy cooking. Sentence number 2. We enjoy cooking. Sentence number 3. She enjoyed cooking. Sentence number 4. They had enjoyed cooking. Sentence number 5. Rita has enjoyed cooking. Sentence number 6. She will enjoy cooking. Now I want you to look very carefully at all of them. Look at the first sentence. How many verbs are there? In fact, look at all the sentences and try to find out how many verbs are there in each sentence. Yes, you are correct. In each sentence, there are 2 verbs. What is the verb in the first sentence? The first one is enjoy. The second one is cooking. Which are the verbs in the second sentence? You are right. The first verb is enjoy and the second one is cooking. In the third sentence also, there are 2 verbs and they are enjoyed and cooking. In the next sentence, verbs are had enjoyed and cooking. Then, in the fifth sentence, the verbs are has enjoyed and cooking. And in the last sentence, the verbs are will enjoy and cooking. Now we know that each of these sentences have 2 verbs. Look carefully at the structures of these verbs. what do you notice? I'm sure you have noticed that in all these sentences, the action words are to, that is, the verbs are to, but the verb structures or the verb forms of in these sentences are not the same. If you look at the verb form of or verb structure of the verb enjoy in all these sentences, you will find that the verb structures are different. So in the first sentence you have enjoy, in the second sentence you have enjoy, in the third sentence you have enjoyed. That means you have added a tail, ed, which is a suffix. And in the fourth sentence you have had enjoyed. And in the fifth sentence, you have has enjoyed. And in the last sentence, you have will enjoy. So in all these sentences, the verb structure of the verb enjoy is not the same. But if you look at the other verb, which is cooking, you will find that in all these sentences, the verb structure of cooking is the same. Now I want you to do another quick written activity. Please draw a table with 3 columns. In the first column, write subject. In the second column, write verb. And in the third column, also write verb. What kind of verb we will write later on. So in the first column, for the first sentence, you write I. For the second column, for the first sentence, you write enjoy. And for the third column of the first sentence, you write cooking. Then for the next sentence, you put the subject we in the first column. Then in the second column, the verb will be enjoy. In the third column, the verb will be cooking. In the third sentence, the subject is she. The second column, the verb is enjoyed, enjoyed. And in the third column, the verb is cooking. In the fourth sentence, the subject is they. The verb is had enjoyed. And in the third column, the verb is cooking. In the fifth sentence, the subject is Rita. The verb is has enjoyed. And in the third column, the verb is cooking. In the last sentence, the subject is she. The verb in the second column is will enjoy. And the verb in the third column is cooking. Now look at this table carefully. What do you see? Yes, I am sure you have noticed once again in a more systematic manner that the form or the verb structure of the verb enjoy or the action word enjoy changes in each of these sentences, but the verb form or verb structure of cooking remains the same. Another thing you might have noticed is that as these verb structures of the verbs in the second column change, they also indicate what time the action was conducted. That means when the first sentence says, I enjoy cooking, it means that the action enjoy is done on a habitual basis. That means in the present time. And in the third sentence, the verb is enjoyed. So the suffix ed is being joined. And here, this verb structure or verb form is indicating that the action was done in the past or in the past time. In the fourth sentence also, the verb had enjoyed is indicating that the verb was done in the past. That means the action is referring to past time. In the fifth sentence, the verb has enjoyed is talking about the action being done in the recent past. That means in the present time. And in the last sentence, the verb will enjoy is referring to or indicating that the action will be done in future time. So you will notice that the verbs in the second column, that is the verb enjoy, the structure of the verb is not only indicating the action which the verb means or denotes, but is also indicating the time of the action in terms of past time, present time, and future time. Now look at the verbs in the third column. The structure is the same. So these verbs, that means in the third column, you only have cooking, 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 cooking in all the sentences. The structure remains the same. So here, the verb indicates action, but the verb structure does not indicate the time of action in terms of whether the action was done in past time or present time or future time. So now that you have noticed that some verbs are very rich, they have different clothes. That means in winter they wear a different kind of cloth, in summer they wear different cloth, and in another season they wear a different kind of cloth. That means they have different forms. But the verb in the third column is very poor. They just have one form. So these verbs in the second column, which have the ability to change structures in accordance with the time of the action, these are finite verbs. So now we were talking about finite and non-finite verbs. So now we know what are finite verbs. Finite verbs are verbs which are main verbs, which are very important in English grammar, because without a finite verb, which is a main verb, you cannot speak or write a grammatically correct English sentence. And at the same time, these finite verbs are important because they indicate the time of action. So the finite verbs, which also indicate the time of action denoted by the verb, are tenses. And the non-finite verb, which do not have different forms or verb structures, which only indicate action but not time, these are non-finite verbs. So we will be clearer as we move along, but this is just to give an idea when we talk of tenses that we are talking about finite verbs. And finite verbs are main verbs or principal verbs, and we cannot speak or write a grammatically correct English sentence without a finite verb. And when we talk of action, that means when we are talking about verb, we are talking about action, and action is always conducted in some time, isn't it? Sometimes in the present time, sometimes in the past time, sometimes in the future time. So these verbs structures which indicate time of action are called tenses. So you can write down or note down that what are tenses? Tenses are verb forms or verb structures which indicate the time of action of the verb, which time is to be understood in terms of past time, present time, and future time. And only finite verbs have tenses because only finite verbs have different structures which indicate the time of action. Non-finite verbs are verbs which no doubt denote an action, but they do not denote the time of action. They are not main verbs. So today we have learnt something about what is tense and which type of verbs have tenses. So students, I will conclude today's brief introduction to tenses here, and we will continue in the next class with present tense. So thank you very much.
নৱম শ্ৰেণীৰ ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকল, আজি ইংৰাজী ব্যাকৰণৰ পাঠত তোমালোকে টেন্সৰ বিষয়ে শুনিলা। তোমালোকৰ বাবে পাঠ যুগুতাই আগবঢ়ালে শুভলক্ষ্মী বৰুৱাই। আজিলৈ আমাৰ সময়ো হৈ আহিল। তোমালোকক পুনৰ প্ৰীতি আৰু শুভেচ্ছা জনাই আজিৰ অনুষ্ঠান ইমানতে সামৰিছোঁ।